Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon. Irish League podcasting is our game. Kicking Match is our name. Coming at you every 7 days is our regular schedule. And we're finally on the precipice of what we've been looking forward to all season. The split is on the horizon at last, but before we get there, the little Irish League roller coaster had to pop in to Irish Cup semi-final station, where the Cup said, "We'll be keeping our European place this season, if you don't mind." Mostly in thanks to the efforts of the one team with a 100% undefeated record at Seaview. Yes, that team is somehow Ballymena United. They left the leaders Larne reeling after a mediocre March. Can they bounce back in April? And the Crews were able to rely on some stalwarts of years gone by to beat the Swifts at their own late show game, as we prepare to run back one of the best Irish Cup finals in recent history. Not to startle anybody, but we are officially entering the business end of the season. I think we should all start dressing up in suits, some fancy wares. Look, I don't make up the rules. I just decide to make arbitrary ones for people that listen to this podcast. Wouldn't that be a weird tradition that we all just turned up like we were going to some sort of fancy wedding? You know, it's easier to do that now that it's not absolutely Baltic all the time. It can be freezing the odd time, but I have seen this big glowing fire in the sky that is providing heat. So hopefully I don't need to bring that third coat for these next few games. But even though there was only 3 games this weekend, I feel like they really delivered for the drama and the talking points this week. And here to join me and talk through all those little topics is another debutant. They are a commentator. They are part of the Portadown Media Team. They're a key part, actually, of the Portadown fan group We Are Ports, who are the people who are behind a lot of the media stuff at Portadown. He is the person that's asking all the hot questions, those Portadown managers all the time. He is the Jonny that they've been saying, "Well, Jonny too, it's a massive welcome and make some noise in your kitchen, car, bus, whatever, for Mr. Jonny Dunlop." Hello, Jonny.
Hello, Peter. How are you?
I am doing very well. It's nice to have a second Portadown representative on the podcast in a row, just by chance. I've had a few of you media people on the podcast over this season, and it's interesting because it highlights something to me where a lot of people that help out with Irish League clubs are volunteers and they've got involved because of their passion for the club. But for yourself, you've jumped in, you're the man doing comms for a lot of these games, play-by-play, and as someone who only started doing live football on the radio like a year and a bit ago, and that was pretty much being thrown in as a favour, going through the whole ups and downs and the bumps of that, I'm fascinated to chat to you about, I know you must have been a football fan for sure, you loved your club Portadown, but how did you find that learning process of putting on the mic? Because I have not even dared enter the commentary realm. What was the learning process for like that for you, and how have you found it as you progress along?
I was sort of threw in sort of at the deep end, so to speak. We started doing the live streams during the COVID season, and it was something that we'd always spoke about, but it was one of those things that was always putting the long finger, and you always thought to yourself, is it something that we're going to be able to do? Is there going to be a market for it? Will people want to watch live streams of Irish League games? And then when COVID came about, it sort of forced your hand into it. And Mark Beattie originally then done the commentary for it. Then Mark he's took the general manager role at Portadown Football Club now, so he obviously has to step back. He's more important things to be at on match days and stuff. So I was sort of threw in at the deep end, and I didn't have much time to really think about it, to be honest, which probably helped. But I love it. The good thing about it is because it's an in-the-house product as such, you know, We Are Ports TV, you're catering primarily for Portadown supporters, so you can show bias, you know, you don't have to pretend that you don't care who wins or anything like that. You know, you can play it blunt that you're a Portadown supporter and you want Portadown to win, and you can get animated and excited when Portadown score, and you can sound down in the dumps when the opposition score, which this season has happened more than I would like it to, but I love it. So I do. It's a big passion of mine, Portadown Football Club, and doing the commentary on a match day is a privilege more than anything.
But with doing the club streams also comes the extra bit of pressure where most people are obsessed with their club and they know so many little bits of information that you have to know. It's okay when I'm going on there and I'm not exactly know how old that reserve left back for Dungannon is, but for you need to know when Paul McElroy's christening was sometimes. That's you have to be like, that's the first time he's kicked it with his left foot since 2009. Like, you need to be on it, and so many times you are. Like, I've been out of games and I've kind of turned around to you and I'm like, who was that, or what's going on here, and you know it, but you say you love it, and I get that passion, that energy from you. I'm doing a podcast now about Irish League football off the back of jumping in one game. And for yourself, how was the learning process of it? Is it just a case of doing it, getting all your notes together, or bit by bit you found your rhythm, found your flow?
A wee bit of all, I would say. There is a lot of research that you have to do during the week. If you look at the likes of a cameraman or something like that, that does a very important, or production or whatever they do, that's a lot of time consuming stuff on a match day and stuff. But with a comedy, it's like nearly revising for your exams during the week. You have to take a couple of hours out, get your facts and figures and things together. The more that you do it, the more confident you become in yourself. Don't overthink it. But it has been a big learning curve as well. Sometimes it's trying to learn, sometimes less is more, rather than constantly speaking all the time. Sometimes not learning when to speak and learning when just to let the atmosphere, what's happening on the screen, speak for itself. It's a learning process too. But the more I've went on, the more I think I've grew into it. And like I say, you're very nervous at the start, and I like to think some of the nerves have shackled off a wee bit as we've went along. It's easy with Portadown as well, because with the in-house stuff, Portadown, you're always commentating on Portadown every week against somebody else. You know the Portadown team, you know the facts and figures, they're ingrained in you. So it's not something like yourself, if you're sent to cover two different teams that you're not used to or anything, you've sort of two bits of homework to do. I think sometimes people don't maybe see the work that goes on behind the scenes. It's not just sometimes turning up at 2:00 on a Saturday, flicking a few buttons and away you go. There's a whole week's worth of effort that goes into it, and especially in the summer when you're preparing for the new season, it's like countless and endless hours of blood, sweat and tears to get yourself all organised for the start of that season and each match day. So we're a good team, and I think we do a good product that unfortunately we can't help the result every Saturday, but we think we can try and make everything else a wee bit better.
I know you can't talk on behalf of other clubs, but I'm sure your experience would be a ringing endorsement for anybody out there who, even as a bit of a side thing to what they usually do during the week, that right now with Irish League clubs, there might not be whatever role you want to do within your club, doing match reports, doing photography, filming, or even like yourself, doing commentary, when 3 years ago you'd never done it. I'm sure you would say, if you have an interest in it and you want to give it a go, why not send that email or pitch it to the team you support or whatever. You can even do it yourself, like I'm doing it with this podcast, just independently. Like, if you want to do it, give it a go, and you'll usually find somebody else that would absolutely love to have you writing match reports for the team's website or doing social media and stuff like that. There is brilliant opportunities, and sometimes they're not always openly advertised. But if you're interested in it, sometimes the club could be the avenue where you could express your own passion.
Exactly. I couldn't word it any better. Peter, never before have I think Irish League teams have been at the, so much media orientated probably in Irish League history as clubs are at the minute. And it's 24/7. Irish League clubs sort of have to, social media and everything like that, you're trying to sell your club at the minute and trying to get people through the gates. And a club is never going to turn a volunteer away. Clubs are crying out for volunteers, in all aspects, but I know that we're talking about media at the minute. And listen, there's roles there for everybody. It's really rewarding. Like you say, I never imagined a year and a half ago I'll be doing commentary on a Saturday, never mind 3 years ago. But I would thoroughly encourage anybody that has an interest in media and an interest in their local club to raise their hand to go and speak to somebody, because it's really rewarding. It's a brilliant experience. So you'll certainly be welcomed with open arms, I'm sure, wherever you wherever you raise your hand.
Tremendous, Johnny. There was not as many games that happened this weekend, but with that, I was able to see all three of them. And there's only one place to start, and we're going all the way back to Friday night at Seaview, where Ballymena just blew this season completely up. We all know how poor they've been since the start of the year. They've been struggling to get goals, get points, anything. They were going up against the league leaders, a team who looked so cool under pressure, had a tiny blip the week before against Coleraine, but when it comes to cup football, as much as Ballymena have an incredible run on the cup since David Jeffrey took over, on a plastic pitch, Friday night, that just seemed like Larne's to win. But here we are now. Third will no longer get you where the league's sitting, European football. And Ballymena go into their third Irish Cup in 4 years. The 8th cup final of David Jeffrey's career. They turned up and they stunned Larne. So many permutations off the back of this, but there's only one place to start. How exquisite was Dougie Wilson's goal?
It's magnificent. It was right in the postage stamp, wasn't it? And we couldn't have hit it any better. My surprise on Friday night was just how comfortable Ballymena were. You know, like you said there, it was all set up. Larne flying high in the league. Most are talking about them that they've more or less got the league sewn up. Ballymena really struggling. You know, I know there's been a bit of discontent at the showgrounds. You know, I know supporters aren't happy with David Jeffrey. They've had a poor season. The plastic pitch probably coming into play as well. You know, Larne playing that sort of week in, week out. The odds were really stacked about Ballymena, but they do have that Midas touch when it comes to cup football and coming to get into cup finals. But I don't think anybody's seen it coming.
You all of a sudden can manufacture it in reverse now that you see it's happened, because Ballymena have been great in the cup. Ballymena are one of the only teams, if maybe the only team, that's been able to win at Seaview. Maybe this is their little place that works out for them. And Larne haven't been in a goal rush themselves. And perhaps when the pressure was on, we weren't 100% sure were they going to stutter. Now, how did Ballymena do it? It all comes from defence. Saying there was 5 at the back is probably an understatement at times. They were deep and they held their shape. Now, I've saw Ballymena try and do this against Linfield earlier on in the season, and it didn't go very well. But on this night, they flooded their own box with players. Larne were frustrated. If there's one thing that we saw over and over and over again, it was players like Sean Want getting the ball, getting up to the halfway line, looking for a bit of space, looking to try and thread a pass in, not seeing it, coming back and passing it back on to his defender. They could not find an opening. Ballymena just squashed down the play. They slowed it down. They weren't particularly exciting going forward themselves, but one way they were going to get a breakthrough was from getting in a set piece, and that's what they did. 20 minutes to go, up gets teenager Farquhar to head it in, and with 20 minutes to go, Larne needed to come on to them. And then when you're at that point where Larne need to go for it and get the goal, something like that majestic free kick is going to put you to bed. It's the second time now that Ballymena have got through to the final thanks to a glorious free kick. And for Larne, I'm not saying it's panic stations, but a defeat in a big game like a semi-final, when the narrative is that they haven't been there and they don't know how to do it, Linfield are snapping at their heels after a few good wins. The next thing they need to do is just calm it down with a win, because this could spiral. They haven't done it yet this season. It must be said, they've got no form that they will, but they have 5 games to go, and my goodness, do they wish it was like 2.
The thing that I would be worried about a wee bit from a Larne supporter, just based on what I seen on Friday night, is Larne just seemed to me to not have a plan B. You know, you talk about the passing, and when that wasn't obviously working, you know, with Ballymena set up the way you described there, it just seemed that Larne didn't know what to do to break them down. It just had one plan, and it wasn't working. I was surprised. Like, I was watching here as a Portadown supporter. I know how good and how brilliant Lee Bonus is. I barely heard Lee Bonus's name mentioned on Friday evening, probably because he was starved of service. For all the money that Lauren have spent, they haven't got over the line. They haven't won an Irish Cup. They talk about the County Antrim Shields. I don't really count the County Antrim Shield as a senior trophy. I do think Lauren will get stuttery. I think this defeat will worry their supporters. It could really test the mentality of the Lauren players, because looking around that Lauren squad, for as many great players as they have, is there many within their squad that have a league title under their belt, that have been there and done it? Winning a title, no matter what level you're playing at, is a big thing. I'm not saying the wheels are going to come off or anything, but I just don't think it's going to be as clear cut as people think it's going to be.
They've only scored 1 goal in 4 games. And we always thought that this could be a little area that might be an Achilles heel. They have great strikers. They absolutely do. They build really well from midfield. And they're not conceding, which is why they're so high up in the table. It's why they're top without a huge amount of marquee wins. They're in the driving seat. But you do look back at the last month and think, you need to get back going here, because they have big games against Linfield and Cliftonville. That Cliftonville away game is going to be huge. We saw only a few weeks ago how they had Linfield on the ropes at home, and they just didn't have that extra gear to break through and get the goal. It's about resetting for Larne, and I don't want to make a massive deal out of that result, but they weren't able to break that Ballymena team down, and I think other teams in the top 6 will go, this is how we can do it. This is if we man mark Miller and we try and shut down the balls coming from wide. Have Larne been found out? We don't know, but they have the points. Let's go back to Ballymena, who have just had, like I said, the worst 2023. There was all this talk of cutting down their bills, and now, yes, they're sitting in the Section B, bottom 6, but if they're able to do what they haven't done, but if they're able to right the wrongs, what they will see of last season's cup final, and win and get into Europe, it's party time, guys. What issues, what problems? We don't know to what extent those are, but forget about tightening the belts. It may be just the boost and the rejuvenation that club needs. They've got a long way to go, but that could mean a lot to Ballymena. The question is, as a Portadown fan, what would you recommend Ballymena do? Do they push and try and get this 7th place, which they're not out of, but based on their result against Glenavon, which is currently being played as we record this, could knock them out? Do they do what Portadown did, was it like 7 years ago, where they pretty much said, we're in the cup final against Glentoran, we're going to chill out? Do they rest their players for the rest of the season? Or do they keep going, fighting for it? Because if Dave McDade gets injured 5 minutes into Newry away or something, Ballymena fans will not be happy.
Funny enough, a couple of us were chatting on Friday night while watching the match, the different permutations. What was going to be the best thing for Portadown? Ballymena getting to the cup final? Did they then take their foot off the pedal? Obviously, we're playing them on Good Friday. The thought was then, if they're beat in the semi-final, do their heads really drop? They've had like you say, had a horrendous 2023. They get beat in that semi-final. Is they're down and out, they come to us down in the dumps, and we can capitalise on that. I would thoroughly recommend them playing a weekend team on Good Friday. But also spoke about the thing of, obviously Portadown go to Glenavon, the last game of the season. Personally, I don't want to be going to Mourneview with Glenavon trying to seal that 7th place slot. If Ballymena had fell away and Glenavon have 7th place all sealed by the final game of the season, would Glenavon take their foot off the pedal a wee bit and look towards those Euro playoffs and stuff like that? As you speak there, it does ring those echoes of 2015 when Portadown got to the cup final, took their foot off the gas, thinking we've sort of got Europe sewn up. I think we had a couple of ways to secure Europe in those final 6 games. I remember us playing Glenavon at Mourneview. Maybe was it the penultimate game? I think if we'd have won, would have sailed it, and we ended up didn't get Europe at all that season, even though we had 2 or 3 ways of going about it. with the Ballymena hat on, if you're going into a cup final in bad form, if you've rested players and the whole thing going into a cup final, it's hard then just to flick a switch and suddenly turn the form back on again. I would just go with my strongest team all the way up to the cup final and try and finish as high up in the league, try and get that 7th place, and use the Irish Cup as your sort of safety blanket if all goes to pot. But as a Portadown supporter, like I say, I play a weekend team on Friday night against us and hope.
Well, one
very bash for you there, Peter.
And that's why I have media people like yourself on to give that view of the club. And one good thing from your perspective is that Ballymena will be playing on Friday and then Monday and then back on Friday again. That could be something that could benefit you. But you say there that you were looking on at the game thinking, how do we want this to go from a Portadown perspective? What were you thinking? 10 minutes, 5 minutes to go at Mornview Park, Crusaders against Dungannon. You're thinking, you're probably looking at extra time no matter what to tire out Dungannon, but were you thinking the same thing of, maybe Dungannon get to the final? That could distract them. That could be like a focus away. Or could that spur them on, give them the confidence to go into the split buzzing? Ultimately, that wasn't be the case. It was the returning hero, Declan Cadell, who scored a cracker goal, bursting through an injury time to put the sword into the Swifts. I thought Crusaders looked a bit tired. They didn't really get going. Dungannon somewhat frustrated them. They had to change things up and it didn't really seem to work. It just wasn't a coherent performance, I thought, from Crusaders. You could tell what Dungannon was doing. Dungannon was looking for them to play men forward, attack them on the break. Multiple times you saw players in the midfield area of Crusaders just waltzing into space going, is someone going to come on to me? Is someone going to try and tackle me? And there was a few moments of fear for Crusaders where Dungannon almost capitalised on it and almost got them. But it was route one from Crusaders. Bounce on. Declan Cadell's the hero. He's going back to another Irish Cup final. Could he have believed it? Crusaders, it's a repeat now of last year's Irish Cup final. Crusaders Ballymena. Fascinating stuff.
Crusaders just always seem to do it, don't they? They always seem to get over the line. We'll talk about the full-time, part-time difference in the Premiership and how important Europe is to teams. Even when they've had a ropey season, they're not finishing in the top 2 or top 3. They always seem to get to that Irish Cup final and secure that European place. You were talking there about what way I was watching the match with a Portadown head on. Yeah, I sort of went through those emotions as well, thinking to myself, if Dungannon win this, do they take their eye off the ball and suddenly everyone's into the cup and their league form will dip? But I probably didn't want them to win, to be honest. You would imagine, it's difficult to pick yourself up from that. Again, it was another one of those games where you think Crusaders will win this comfortably, 2 or 3-0. But, the Swiss were resolute and, like you say, maybe Crusaders weren't at their best. But Ballymena will certainly be out for revenge because what a way to lose a cup final like they did last year, conceding an injury time in normal time and an injury time in extra time. You couldn't write it. We've all seen the reports about the financial difficulties of a Ballymena United. So I would imagine getting that European football is going to be vital for them for next season. So all in all, it really makes for an interesting cup final.
Some reports would say that Portadown missing out on that European money back, was it 7 years ago, with that cup final, with their league position, that could have very much been a sliding doors moment of could they have reinvested, did they have to change things up, and that will be interesting to see how that pans out for Ballymena. Crusaders are giving Ballymena the eye, saying, hey, we still scoring late goals and you better watch out come late in those games if we haven't already put it out of sight. It also shows you the real longevity of that Stephen Baxter team that they have there. You look at the players that were playing. Obviously, Cadell's the one that's getting the goal. You have Jordan Owens thrown on at half-time. I still think Paul Heatley's a really sharp player, albeit he doesn't have the real rapid speed that he might not have had. You still have BJ Burns at the back. They have built a really strong team there and it's doing the business. Not exactly the top end of where they'd want to be, but we are potentially coming to a time where when will these new faces jump through and be the next new backbone of the next great Crusaders side. But for Ballymena, I did say, hey, David Jeffrey, what a brilliant cup record getting to, this now will be his 8th cup final. He's only got one of them. They've had a lot of disappointment in these finals. That only one being the League Cup back in 16-17. Right now, you'd have to say Crusaders are the favourites. But if Ballymena can get their engine going again, feel themselves, be up for it, I think that could be a very entertaining and very even affair by the time May comes round.
Definitely, you speak there about that Crusader squad. It nearly feels like a last hurrah for the bulk of this Crusader squad. Like you said, players like Jordan Owens, Paul Haitley, I know Declan Cadell has come out of retirement, Jordan Forsyth, BJ Burns, players like that seem to have been at Crusaders forever, it feels. And that's been really their heartbeat and their backbone, so to speak, maybe the last 6-7 years. And it does feel like this is the last hurrah for that squad. It feels like this cup final maybe will be just maybe a good way for a few of those players to go out. Players like that have given their all for Crusaders. So I'm sure that'll be in the back of their mind going into this Irish Cup final. Lots of them might think this, I never get to another Irish Cup final possibly again. So it will be interesting. Yeah, you're talking there about, again, with my Portadown hat on, Ballymena, I think this season very much remind me of a Portadown side. There's a lot of similarities between around that 2016, 2017 Portadown, where Portadown were at as a club, and also we're at as a team as well. There's a lot of similarities in regards to where Ballymena are, the difficulties they have, and a manager that's been there and done it and is one of the most decorated managers in the game, but has come under a bit of pressure. People saying, he's a bit old school. So I'm sure David Jeffrey will be going out to prove a point as well. 8 cup finals, did you say, Ballymena have been in under David Jeffrey's tenure, and have only got one? I didn't realise that. I didn't realise there'd been in that many cup finals. But so,
well, you wouldn't classify them because there's the odd County Shield, but
I think it's a real interesting cup final, and again, all the talk about all the full time teams in the Irish League and the gap and everything like that. You have two more or less part time teams in the Blue Ribbon Cup final, which is good to see.
Well, I often say here about bringing guests on, being a Scot, etc., etc., can only go one way. Portadown were playing against Glentoran up at the Oval in what is the penultimate pre-split fixture. It didn't go well, Johnny. Let's just get the headline out there. 5-1 it ended. Plenty of things that went on throughout the game. I think I would put it best. Your manager put it best. Glentoran win 5-1, but some parts of that Portadown display were absolutely kamikaze. Yep. It was a hard watch, I imagine.
It was. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think the majority of Portadown supporters going to the Oval on Saturday, I don't think we're expecting to get 3 points. A point, I would have been over the moon with a point. And I think most supporters would have been over the moon with a point. But I think, probably need a bit of a reality check that, where Glentoran are compared to Portadown. So a defeat was something I probably expected to an extent and wouldn't have been too disappointed with it. But it's probably the manner of the defeat which has maybe annoyed or disappointed Portadown fans. I think you're right. Niall Curry described it brilliantly when he called it, some of the defending was kamikaze. And you look at, you have the headed back pass from Paddy McNally where Andre Masney's more or less near beside him, and I think he heads it back blind. It's a really poor goal to give away. I think the first goal, even, it seems like Jay Donnelly has a free header within the 6-yard box. Andre Masney, the keeper, possibly should do better with the 5th goal as well. He seems to lose it a wee bit at the back post when the deep cross comes in. Glentoran nicked the ball round about the halfway line for the 2nd or 3rd one, and Jay Donnelly more or less has to hold Portadown half to run, to carry the ball, to slot home. So it was the manner of the defeat and the manner of the goals. But I think maybe a bit of perspective is needed as well. I think for Portadown to go and get a result at the Oval would have been, amazing, but I don't think many supporters expected that. Obviously, the sending off of Paul McElroy is a major talking point. I could not...
Salt in the wound is an understatement, I'd say.
I could not believe it when Keith Kennedy pulled out the red card. It looked innocuous to me at the time. I have watched the replays back. A yellow card at best. I think Keith Kennedy isn't even looking at it. He seems to be looking in a completely different direction, but yet seems to take the red card out instantly. So he hasn't got to my mind, by looking back at it. He hasn't. It's not as if he's got word from the fourth official or anything like that, because he pulls the red card out instantly without really looking. At best, he's seen it out of the corner of his eye. You can't give a red card based on something out of the corner of your eye. You need to see it, or at least get advice from somebody that has seen it. Losing Paul McElroy for 3 games, if it happens, I don't know if the club will appeal it or not. It's probably the biggest blow of all that will have come out of Saturday, I think.
It does remind me a fair bit with the Jordan Stewart red card in the Oval, almost in the same area of the pitch, where if you haven't seen it, it's the player here, Paul McElroy. There's a Glentoran player, Devlin, kind of down on the ground. They're both getting up. And like, the Glentoran player has a wee tug on Paul McElroy's shirt. McElroy does shove him to the ground when he's half up, and he kind of does it round his chest. It's not particularly forceful, but obviously there's enough to kind of shove him down. And I would feel your frustration around what you're suggesting there with that referee saying it in full sight. You know, I don't usually spend time here criticizing referees, but I understand as a fan how frustrating that would be. I often think sometimes when I see decisions I disagree with, it's often surrounded by, if you're deciding this has happened, what have you seen, or if this hasn't happened, how hasn't this happened? What have you seen to say that that's going to be here? You know, if that's not it's the whole thing where if that's not a foul, then it's a dive. Book him, you know, that kind of thing. So in that situation, that's tough.
I do think too the Glentoran player makes a meal of it. I don't think there's a bit of a shove. I think McElroy's trying to get up. It seems like Devlin has his arm tugging in his shirt, and then McElroy gives him a bit of a shove on the way up. I think Devlin makes a meal of it. I just think it's a really poor decision, and let's make no bones about it. Probably Paul McElroy in the January transfer window was Portadown's biggest investment, based on him producing the goods to try and keep us in the league. And then to suddenly lose him, possibly for 3, at least possibly 3 of the 5 split games, is an absolute heartbreaker. I hope the club do appeal it, and I hope sense is seen over it, although I'll probably won't hold my breath, to be honest.
No doubt about it, Paul McElroy will be a huge loss. He's scored a fair amount of goals for Portadown since January. It took a while for him to get going, but he's been a key figure in the games that I've seen, getting up top. His real quality seems to be the ability to run to the channels, bring it back. He's there in the right place at the right time often when he's inside the box. Against Ballymena, that's the game I'm sure you'd want to have him there, that's coming up on this Friday, so that'll be difficult. Reflecting here on Glentoran, they've had this up and down season and they're out of the cup, and they go into this split now trying to be the ones that ruin everybody else's season. They'll look at it now with 4 points off Linfield, thinking, okay, there's one way we're going to get into Europe, and that's through the league. We can get it automatically if we get second, but they've got to pull these other teams back down towards them. But they also want to position them well, get into a good rhythm, as we talked about, going into this playoff system, which they'll be in no matter what. Despite the fact that Portadown were poor, there's Jed Donnelly scoring a hat-trick when he hasn't had a great season compared to his usual standards. Danny Perkis was quite impressive as well. Do you see, if you were a Glentoran fan, and I'm sure you don't want to see much optimism on behalf of that team, but did you see elements of that team that you think are quite impressive compared to some of the other top 6 teams that you've seen this season?
I was probably most impressed. I thought Terry Devlin was very good for Glentoran on Saturday. It's hard to judge Glentoran because I didn't think, they won 5-1, but like we spoke about there, they capitalised on a lot of individual errors from Portadown on Saturday. I thought they won 5-1 without really getting out of second gear. I don't think Portadown really tested them, so I find it hard to judge just exactly how good Glentoran were on Saturday. But I do think, a club with the finances and the size of Glentoran to go another season without securing European football, I think would be catastrophic. Maybe is too strong of a word, but it certainly wasn't in the plan. And there could be a thing too where there could be a mentality thing as well going into the top 6, bottom 6 split for the likes of Cliftonville. That's been there and thereabouts, and it maybe dropped off the pace a wee bit. It can be one of those things where form plays a part. Glentoran maybe can come into it, and maybe some of those teams that are like of a Crusaders are maybe going to take their eye off the ball a wee bit, concentrate on the Irish Cup. Liverpool could be going into those playoff games disappointed that they haven't get second. And so I do think Glentoran have a chance, but they're very inconsistent. I would imagine out of all the teams, they're the most inconsistent of the lot.
And they'll have to deal with the one team they haven't been able to deal with, and that is Cliftonville if they don't come second. You know, that I can say here, and I can be proponent saying, look how good Glentoran are. How will Crusaders fare knowing that they've got that Irish Cup final? You're right. Not getting into Europe for Glentoran it's a poor season, no matter what way you look at it. They've got, in the last 5 games, they've got 4 wins. But if they are to qualify for Europe, they're going to have to do something they haven't done. Beat Cliftonville. They're going to have to get a big result against Linfield one way or the other as well if it's to come there. So they're looking good, but they've got a long way to go if they're to finish this season on a high. We shift to the news segment, and top of this segment is that Jamie Glacken's 10-game ban that was handed to him for comments that were allegedly made online by an account associated with him has been overturned. I'm going to go straight to the Belfast Telegraph here because I'm not in there. I'm not getting information any other way. So I'm going to go through other people's reporting. Belfast Telegraph said that the bansiders appealed the decision and were able to get the ban overturned on the grounds that the player did not make the comments and they came from another party. So that is the decision that's been made there. I have no other information bar that. I don't have a report from the IFA telling me or the committee saying this is why it hasn't happened, what evidence they had. But if you're Coleraine for this season and beyond, they will be delighted to have one of their key creative forces back in their team for the foreseeable, as regardless of the offence, 10 games is a long time to be out of playing football. It would have extended on to next season.
Yeah, and I'm the same as you. I don't know too much about it. I've just read it in the Belfast Telegraph. I have to say I was surprised. I don't know. Does it set a precedent going forward? It is what it is. I'm sure Korean fans will be happy. It seemed a pretty cut and dry case to me when I compared it to the appeal that we didn't get overturned. I do probably think it'll be a lesson, even though Jamie Glacken, the appeal has been overturned and he won't serve a 10-game ban. It probably will be a lesson to a lot of players to be careful with their social media use, regards of what can happen, what the punishment could be. Like you said, that would have carried over to next season. As a Portadown supporter, as you opened this piece with, it just seems frustrating. I look at some of the appeals that have been heard over the past few weeks. When I look at the 3 cases, I'm including Portadown in those 3 cases, Portadown seemed like the one that was most open to interpretation, the one that was most, it didn't impact on the result as such and things like that, yet the other 2 have had their appeals overturned, while Portadown unfortunately didn't.
I agree with what you said there when it comes to players and social media. What it was alleged to have been posted by Jamie Glacken, that should be for all players. That should be a line in the sand saying, the IFA saying, this is the rule. It relates to social media too, if you weren't aware of that. And if you post something similar or goes against the guidelines that they highlight, this could be the punishment that comes through. It's funny to have a Portadown fan on again. During the week, had a bit of fun. The Danske Bank, and this will be the last time I say this, and it's actually the first time because I don't mention sponsors here. The Danske Bank Premiership is no more. It will be no more after 11 years. They will not be the sponsor. I believe they were in the running to get it again, but this says that they have not been successful, or it's not going to happen. And we're going to have a new sponsor. Could this be across all forms of football? We'll have to see. I only bring that up because then there was a big discussion about sponsors, and then we talked about kit sponsors and all the rest. And what I feel is the Nuki Brown Ale to Newcastle sponsorship of the Irish League, Tato and Portadown. That just felt like a marriage made in heaven. What a beautiful kit that was. And it seems quite humorous, but also Tato on a kit just looks so 90s and so great.
I know. I look at at pictures from that. I think there's a picture. The best picture I see of that Tato kit, I think it's of Richard Clark possibly, and it's just an iconic Portadown kit. The iconic thing about it is Portadown didn't win anything in that kit, but it's still one of those kits that's widely regarded as Portadown's finest ever kit. Now, you're talking about Danske Bank there as well. Suppose of a certain generation, people always associated Smirnoff. The Smirnoff Irish League was a generation's sponsor that they associated with that league, while another younger generation of, I think, Danske Bank were about for 12 years, and that's that. There's always those sponsors associated with a league or a generation at a certain time, and kits like that. But no, certainly that Portadown Tato kit is a joy to behold, and I'm lucky to have one of the replica shirts up in my wardrobe here of my pride and joy.
Tremendous. There is also a Cliftonville Kit Kat kit. Looked pretty sweet as well. It's obviously nice kits around the league now. But yes, Danske Bank's no more. What will it be? Probably something a wee bit boring because we're all mature and fancy now. But hey, we can all dream that it's a bit funny and a bit bantery when it comes to the Irish League. We look ahead to this week's fixtures, and the first thing that you'll all notice, or that you should put in your diary because you've probably forgotten about it, game week 1 of the split, game week 34 of the league, and it's happening on a Friday. All games are happening on a Friday. Very League of Ireland this. I think many people have called for this type of thing to happen. We have games happening on a Tuesday. Now we have a Friday late kickoff all across the league in one go. I think it's a great idea. I think if it's successful, I think you could see this being integrated in the league maybe 3-4 times a season. I believe your manager, Nal Curry, is a fan. Are you a fan, or do you like your wee Saturday 3 o'clock? You're loyal to tradition.
It's a wee bit like the 3G grass pitch debate. You'd love to play in grass because you're a traditionalist, but probably best for business is a 3G pitch. I feel the same probably about. I love football on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, but I honestly, from a Portadown perspective and being at the games, there's a real niche there about the games on the Friday night. Even I know Portadown have had a couple of 5:30 kickoffs as well on a Saturday evening, and they've been really popular. The crowds have come out. We've had great crowds, great response, and there's just something about the atmosphere as well. But I think it's important to try and cater for everybody as well. You have people that want their 3 o'clock kickoffs. You want people that like their Friday night kickoffs, and I think a mixture of all three is really good. But I know at Portadown Football Club we're big fans of it. It's really worked for us. It's brought the crowds out. Been great atmosphere. We played now. A lot of that maybe you put down to the games and the results. We beat Glenavon in the 5:30 kickoff, I think it was, on the Saturday evening, and we beat Dungannon Swifts on the Friday night. So obviously you associate, everything has worked there. The result, everybody's on the high. It's been a brilliant experience for everybody all round. But I do think going forward, the Irish League is going to have to be. It's more flexible to have games on Friday nights and different kickoff times because everybody's different. There's always that old chat about a lot of your support, a lot of the people that you're aiming at are playing football at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. So you're missing a lot of people out by going up against that. Clubs ultimately need to do what's best for themselves. Some clubs, it mightn't work on a Friday night, so I think that it's good that it allows the clubs to change. Certainly for Portadown, Friday night and even a Saturday evening has been a great success for us.
You mentioned 3G. It would be remiss of me not to say to yourself that could be a reality potentially. There's plans out there publicly for the redevelopment of Shamrock Park, and as a part of that plan could see a artificial surface. Have you come to terms that could be the future?
I have, as I was saying there, again, I would love football to be played in grass, and it's what we've grew up with, and if you're a traditionalist, that's the way you want it. But you can't argue with the benefits of a 3G surface. A 3G surface there in regards to Portadown, it makes Shamrock Park a real hub of the community. It means that the ground can be open from 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. People can be using the facilities, using that pitch. It makes it a real, like I've said there, a hub of the community. It makes it a real place to go. There's different things in that can come out of that then if you have things, you're having that pitch used in regards to the Portadown area. Getting training facilities is extremely difficult. and you're paying on any training facilities you do get or that you do manage to book, you're paying through the nose for them, you know. And there's not only the Portadown first team you have to worry about. You have your under-20s, your under-18s, all the youth teams, all the ladies team as well. You know, they're all having at the moment to train in different places and can also make the club money be in the business side of things, and it allows the youth and the ladies and all the teams to make that Portadown Shamrock Park one-stop shop their home. Everything's there, their training, everything's there, instead of maybe going to Brownstown one week or going to Tandragee or going here, there and everywhere. So I think from all those points of view, it's a no-brainer, to be honest.
We'll have to see. That is in the pipeline, how soon it could be that there is an artificial surface at Shamrock Park. On its current configuration, that would make the league 50-50, and no doubt we'll be talking a lot about artificial surfaces as it all goes along. And as you mentioned there about the amount of people that are playing games at the same time at 3 o'clock, if you haven't listened to last week's podcast with Stuart Cherry, we had a big discussion in regards to that, about changing times and when they play Irish League football. And he sat there and he had done the math, and he suggested to me that there's potentially upwards of 8,000 people in Northern Ireland every Saturday who are otherwise engaged around the 3 o'clock time, not able to go and attend Irish League football. So that kind of shows you. But of course, there's a variety of things you can do. There's lots of different discussion points and topics that we can get into, and I know that I will do as the podcast moves on. But we're going to chug straight to this Friday. How will they come off against Glenavon? We don't know that as of time of recording, but we'll start at Shamrock Park. You've done it once before, where you've got a big deficit that you need to bring down. I know this phrase is used quite a lot, but down at Shamrock Park against Ballymena United, this is must win, Johnny, isn't it?
I really think it is. You know, in essence, Portadown have 5 cup finals, and I don't want to go out at the first hurdle. It's a big game, so it's a massive game for Portadown. Portadown are capable of a result. You know, this last few months at Shamrock Park, Portadown, they've got their act together, and they could be a match for anybody. And on their day, and if they play with the same tenacity and the same way that they've played against Glenavon and Crusaders and Dungannon Swifts, I think Portadown can get a result. A lot is going to hinge on a lot. You know, there is that question mark over Paul McElroy. You know, he will be a miss if he is suspended for the game. Portadown's season could be decided within the next 8 days. You know, we'll have that game on Good Friday, home to Newry on Easter Tuesday, and then home to Carrick Rangers on the Saturday. So it's really a massive week for the club, but I'm confident that they can get a result on Friday night.
I appreciate this is a difficult question due to your connection with the club and all the work that you do around it. And I'm sure you've potentially been coming to terms with the idea as the season has progressed on. You obviously don't want to even think about it at this stage, but when you look at the idea, 7 points behind, next season Portadown might not be a top flight team. Do you feel as though Niall's come in and regardless of what happens, has started to build a foundation where it can be a bounce back rather than what happened a number of years ago where Portadown went down, and many would say if it wasn't for the COVID situation there wasn't a guarantee that they were going to get back up in that third bite of the cherry?
Up until Niall come in, I honestly struggled to see where we were going to get a goal, never mind get a point. I think Niall has brought a feel-good factor to the club. I think he has brought players that care about the club, want to do their best for the club, know the Irish League, and he's given us hope. Because honestly, I look back to October, November time, I didn't have much hope. To be honest, I thought we could be relegated by January, to be honest. So I think there's that feel-good factor around the club at the minute. And I think I think you put it right there yourself, the foundations have been set. If the worst comes to the worst, I think we are in a good place to bounce back. As we all know, the Championship, though, is a mad league. I've had 3 years of experience of it, and it's not somewhere I want to go back to. But, you know, I know we said this before back in 2017 or whenever it was, there's no better man to bring Portadown back up. I think Portadown as a football club were in a different place in 2017. There was still dealing with a lot of turmoil, a lot of different behind the scenes issues back then. I think the club is in a very good place off the pitch at the minute, and I think like if the worst comes to the worst, I think the foundations have been put in place that we are in a good position to bounce back. Ned has a great, not only Ned, but he's a great backroom staff behind him there as well. John McAllister and Stephen Hines and Cliffy Adams and Dean Crow and the fellas like that. He's instilled players that know the club from about the town, and as well as John McAllister and Clifford Adams and stuff. So if the worst comes to the worst, we are in a good place, hopefully, to bounce back. But I'm not giving up hope. I still think we can do it.
You're absolutely right, and I'm sure people who are fans of Irish League podcasts are probably sick of this Portadown renaissance that everyone's been talking about, getting excited, because I think I'm happy to go on record and saying that if Portadown were to survive or even just finish 11th and then they would still have work to do, it would be the greatest escape in Irish League history. I think there's no doubt about it, how poor they were and the run they've been able to go on. Some of those big games under the lights have been remarkable. You have that mad Newry game only a few weeks ago added in. It has all of the seasoning to make for an incredible story, but they have to do things on the pitch, like getting a win against Ballymena. Will Ballymena be up for it, or will they be shattered after a big week? And as you said, within the next 10 days, Portadown's fate could be sealed, or they could be sitting there pretty. The other games that you'll be looking at, you'll be having a blue scarf around your neck, metaphorically, when Glenavon hosts Dungannon. For Portadown perspective, this is a must-win for Glenavon, isn't it?
It definitely is. I can't say how disappointed we were that Newry beat Glenavon a couple of weeks ago. I think that's Newry's only victory since way before Christmas anyway. Glenavon notoriously get it difficult against Dungannon Swifts, but Glenavon's picked up a bit of form. I think they're unbeaten in their last four. They're hunting down that 7th place Euro playoff. So hopefully Glenavon come through for us. Obviously, Glenavon still want us on Boxing Day. We're a wee bit like their noisy neighbours.
I love this theory. I love this kind of theory where it's like the brother who like wants to push you around, but they don't want you to actually leave. It's I love this kind of theory of like Glenavon are gonna win for the sake of Portadown just so they can beat them on Boxing Day. It's like, yeah, we just want to do it so we can beat them. I love this theory.
For the sake of Mid-Ulster, Peter. Hands across the divide and all that.
Oh my goodness. Well, Dungannon will feel as though they had a decent showing against Crusaders, in the same way where when I will talk about Newry and Portadown against Glenavon, against any of these teams in the bottom 6, they'll ultimately really have to win against the teams around them. But if you take Newry, Dungannon and Portadown, they'll look at Ballymena, Carrick and Glenavon as the games they need to win to try and push on. Obviously, Portadown is the team 7 points behind, not great goal difference. They're the ones with the least amount of slippage. How it goes, I just don't know, because ultimately that Monday game could play into it. I think Glenavon will need to push and push, and they're such a maverick team. I couldn't predict one way or the other. Then the other game, Carrick against Newry. Every time I think of this fixture, I think of the big, massive Lockhart goal that was scored down at Taylor's Avenue to kick off the season. Ultimately, Carrick were able to win that game outright. Will they do it again? Newry are struggling for goals, but they almost did it on Dungannon and got any kind of points against Cliftonville a few weeks ago. Once again, Portadown have had very poor returns when they went to Taylor's Avenue. You'll hope Newry comes back with nothing as well.
I look at the split fixtures and I look at Newry, and people talk about Portadown hunting down Dungannon Swifts. I honestly think the team Portadown are hunting down is Newry. I think Newry have had an impressive start, but they have dropped like a stone since then. They got the 3 points in November against us, and I think the only other 3 points they picked up since then was that victory against Glenavon. I think when you look, not to hark back to that, but the appeal and the 3 points that Portadown lost against Newry really was a 6 point swing. If Portadown had got those 3 points, you're going into the split 1 point behind Newry, with Newry to come to Shamrock Park. So that's gutting to say the least. But it is what it is. Newry just seemed devoid of any confidence. It looked to me like a team that could go the whole split without winning a game, to be honest. And I hope so as well.
And you'll be praying for that as well,
Yes.
I imagine, Johnny. With that being said, one of the most interesting fixtures for me is Dungannon against Newry City on the final day. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If you were a Portadown fan, from a Portadown perspective, are you like, okay, we have to do our own thing and push on with that? Or does that potentially set up a situation where you're like, oh my goodness, is that a marriage of convenience for them both? It probably isn't, because neither of them will want to finish 11th and either face a Loughgall who have had a good season or a resurgent Warren Point. But looking at that, does it make you sweat knowing that they're the last game to play? Or are you happy that ultimately, for your own heart, you can decide which team you really want to win that?
It's not ideal, but at the heels of the hunt, it's about what we do as well. I want us to be in that situation on the last day of the season where it's all to play for and Portadown still have a chance of finishing 11th or 10th or whatever it is. Like you said, it could be a more convenience.
A draw there and then Portadown winning somehow leapfrog them both would be utterly ridiculous. I don't know the permutations that would make that happen, but it would be mental.
You were saying there about earlier on about the Great Escape and stuff, and if Portadown did, if there was some sort of permutation where Portadown managed to leapfrog both of them or whatever it is, but you were talking there about the Great Escape. I honestly think that if Niall Curry does keep Portadown up, it is up there with Ronnie McFall winning the first league championship. It's not far behind it in terms of achievement and where he's coming from and what he's done. But no, I hope it doesn't go down to the final day, because I think I heart monitor my watch, and I think there'll be smoke coming off it for about 2 hours that day.
So the three big games at the top: Linfield against Crusaders, Larne against Glentoran, Cliftonville against Coleraine. Favourites going in is probably the top three: Linfield over Crusaders, Larne over Glentoran, and Cliftonville against Coleraine, although that's always a spicy fixture. It's going to be Larne against Glentoran on TV. Oh, that's a tough one for Larne. Yes, Glentoran come back. It's famously the most boring game of Irish League history at the start of the season. Now we go back to Inver Park to see it all over again. After seeing Glentoran, as you said, only really win after going through second gear, this is a nice chance for Larne to come out quick. I wonder, will Larne come out of the blocks fast to try and get an early goal and say, we're in charge, you're hunting us, remember?
Yeah, I would agree. I think Larne probably will want to get that early goal to settle the nerves. Maybe the longer the game goes on, the more nervous Larne become. I see a draw there, to be honest.
I think so too. It's one of those things where actually, if Glentoran are going to score from a Larne perspective, score early.
Yeah.
You know, I saw in that game at the Oval that Portadown were not dealing with Glentoran's shape. They rarely play against a team in that shape. It was almost a situation where Glentoran scored the goal. Portadown were like, okay, right, we're down here. Right, we're one down. Now it's time to just play football. All right, because we can't just hold back. We need to push forward. I wonder for Larne, do they almost need Glentoran to score first so that they can wake up and push forward? Because Glentoran aren't particularly well known for their sitting back and taking on pressure. That defensive solidity has not been the biggest strong point. They're great at the back. They had a great run at the start, but seeing out games hasn't always been their way. There's been a few 1-0 wins to them. It's usually by blasting teams away. Cliftonville, they need 3 points or they can forget about the league title very, very simply. And in many ways, if they don't win, they can almost forget about second as well. Just depends.
Yeah, I'm sure from a Cliftonville point of view, the season promised so much, and within a fortnight, they could be out of the league title race, knocked out of the Irish Cup. From their point of view, it's all going to be about the mentality. I think Cliftonville's out of the title race as it is. I think they're playing for third spot, to be honest. So it's just how they put those results behind them, and probably if I was them, I imagine all eyes are going to be focused on the European playoffs.
Linfield are the team that host Crusaders. Could Crusaders do Cliftonville a favour? I must say, on a big pitch like Windsor, a oftentimes sludgy pitch like Windsor, it's like the Crusaders' kryptonite. in many ways. That's not what they like. They didn't like going down to Shamrock Park. They didn't enjoy their 2 trips to Mournview Park. I'm not saying you can't play on grass, but it doesn't really help them. After a big game against Dungannon and Linfield rested, this feels like a game that Linfield can put down their own marker and say, we're up for this fight and we can take care of these top 6 teams very well. And in their home patch, that'd be great, I'd say, if you were a Blue fan.
Yeah, I agree. I see Linfield winning this quite comfortably. Crusaders have had that big semi-final, and I think they possibly will have eyes on the Irish Cup final as well. As you have said there, they do struggle, at Windsor a bit. So I can see Linfield picking up 3 points and really putting the pressure on to Larne, as I don't think Larne will beat Glentoran on Saturday.
Jonny, it's been a delight to have you on. Before we go anywhere, Portadown were in the playoff last season against Anna United. And if we can be optimistic for the fortunes of the Shamrock Park men, at the minute, if they were to finish 11th and get a playoff, I think you'd bite their hand off and take it no matter what. What would make you more nervous? Loughgall or Warrenpoint? 2 teams that I think you've had tricky histories with.
Yes. Now, we played Loughgall in the championship. Now, I think we beat Loughgall every time we played them in the championship from memory. Warrenpoint was a bit more tricky, especially we always struggled going up to Milltown. I can only really remember us winning there once or twice. So probably Warrenpoint. I think the second leg would obviously be at Shamrock Park, which offers you a wee bit of comfort there. But listen, a playoff, I will take anybody, and I have full confidence that whoever Portadown would meet in a playoff, I think there's that Portadown have now that quality, of that goal scoring threat, that I think they would come through a playoff. If they do come through a playoff, I think lessons have to be learned in regards to recruitment and things like that. I think lessons were learned in regards to who Niall brought in January. I would have every confidence in Portadown getting through a playoff, and fingers crossed to do.
Well, let's hope for your sake and many other fans of Portadown that your greatest commentary moment is ahead of you, and it's screaming, breaking the levels on a mic. And if it sounds awful, then it's probably a good thing, because it'll be you going crazy for some goal. I could just imagine what you must have been like watching that comeback against Newry down at the showgrounds. That was an epic moment this season, no matter what happens. And regardless of what happens to Portadown, I think they will be a miss to the league if they go down. But look, you don't get to stay in divisions based on what is coming through your turnstiles. It's about the points you win on the pitch. So good luck for the rest of the season. But Jonny, where can people find the things you do and the stuff you say and get involved in some of these commentaries, listening wise?
The Portadown social media page and Portadown FC on Twitter, on Facebook. weareportstv.com if you want to purchase live streams, and We Are Ports TV on YouTube as well. We bring great content on there. We do some uncut stuff as well. We had an uncut video there. We had kindly looked for a pre-match lunch a couple of weeks ago, and Richard Jamison that helps behind the scenes with us as well is good at that. So plenty of Portadown Football Club media content out there on all the normal social media platforms and on We Are Ports TV on YouTube.
And if there's many Portadown fans that are out there listening to this thinking, this all sounds great, I'm sure I can also give you a chance to promote the We Are Ports Supporters Club that they can get involved with.
Yes, We Are Ports is a membership club at Portadown Football Club. It was set up around about 2017 when Portadown were really in dire straits. It's got over 100 members, and those members pay £12 a month to join We Are Ports. That money then is only spent within the football club. Members get to vote on where that money is spent. It's not just a case of your money gets spent and you don't know where it's going. You get to vote on where that money goes. There's different benefits of being in We Are Ports as well. We run different events. It's a democratic membership society. People contribute, their £12 a month spent within the football club, and they get to vote where that money goes. And it's just, there's no money goes on players or anything like that. It's all different things in and around the football club.
There we go. And Jonny, I will say goodbye. Really appreciate you coming on And have you got like a Twitter account that they can follow you personally? Do you have like cat memes or anything they can go check out?
No cat memes, unfortunately, Peter, but I'm on Twitter at Dunlop Johnny. If you want to be bored by my exciting life, you can follow it there.
Every life is thrilling, Jonny, and you've been a delight to have on. Thank you so much, and hopefully we can chat again very soon.
Been a pleasure, Peter. Thank you very much.
I'm not saying it's because I watched some wrestling over the weekend, but I feel like over the next few weeks I'm going to find some reason to describe a game as an absolute slobber knocker, and I feel like over the next while one of these games will deliver. It's the end of the pod, you know the score. If you want to keep up to date with all the fun and frolics that goes on in the Kicking Match universe, aka our social media, you can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook. It's all at Kicking Match there. You can also ask your little smart speaker to play this podcast aloud, hands-free. Just say, hey smart speaker, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast, and I have seen you little numbers creeped up. You can also follow me, if it is of course your listening platform of choice. You can be a subscriber, or sorry, the term is a follower of the pod on Spotify. I would appreciate it, and it should hopefully give you a wee bump whenever I get these pods up. Until next time, enjoy the Friday game if you get to it, and I will see you again very soon. Cheerio, toodles, goodbye.